crazy. Jimmy on the beat, boy.
People, this is the Trophy Room. It's Tuesday, August 10th. Thanks for hanging out with us. Today, we got a major NFL receiver on the toxic trade block, who whether or not Westbrook is a liability, and who's going to win the worst division in football. Whether you're listening to the podcast or wherever you're at, please go give us a 5-star review. It would help a ton. Get a screenshot, post on the story, go support the boys. I'm your host, Brett Hammer, alongside my man, Jackson Garlitz. Jackson with an X instead of that CKS. Go find him on YouTube. Just search Jackson Garlitz. As always, you can find me on Instagram at BHammerTime with the X-Tree. Also, people, we are expanding. We're now on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube. Search up Trophy Room Radio. If that's how you prefer to listen to your podcast, we are there as well. Jackson, despite all the toxic millennials and the TikTok kids, how are we doing?
We're doing fine. Listen, I don't mind that you're on TikTok. I don't mind that you're making a career on TikTok. I don't care about any of that. What I have a problem with is the mentality that because you have an opinion and you put it on TikTok, it means anything. You are an individual with your thoughts. Everybody else who doesn't have a TikTok also is an individual with their thoughts. Their thoughts aren't important because they're their thoughts. Their thoughts are important because they don't suck. And some of y'all put some content out there that I see that is hilarious, and I watch it over and over again, and I pee laughing, and I send it to my wife. She doesn't think they're nearly as funny, but I think they're hilarious. Some of y'all put content out there and get really mad when it gets 4 likes, and it's because your content sucks. I'm sorry. Like, TikTok just has so much content, and that's a good thing. I love a lot of content, but a lot of content doesn't mean good content. It means a lot of content, guys.
TikTok, we were having this conversation right before we started recording. TikTok is probably the easiest social media platform just from this perspective, in that TikTok is amazing at sharing your content for you. Like, you have to do the least amount of work in promoting your own content, whereas
unlimited help.
Yeah, like when was the last time you were just scrolling through your Instagram Explore page and you followed or whatever? Like, never. That never happens. Most people, when they're on TikTok, spend probably just as much time on their For You page as they do on their regular page. And so it's like, yes, like I think the content that you actually have to make for TikTok is a little bit more difficult because you have video editing as well as script writing, whereas with Instagram, it's a lot of just pictures, or it's a lot of just the grind's different basically. And so like, look, you can go on TikTok and just post a video of you breathing, and you'll probably get a minimum of 500 views. It's not that difficult. So going back to your point, look, we would know, like, we understand we don't have the most important opinion in the world, and we don't think that you should just listen to us, and we don't think everyone should listen to us just because we're the most important. Like, we just grind at it. We pump the content out. We share it. We do YouTube. We like work on the podcast. We go out and get ads and stuff. And it's like, I don't think that I deserve 100 million views. I'm willing to work for 100 million views. And that's the difference. It's like, I don't have this esoteric belief that I'm just the greatest that there ever was because I own a microphone. Yeah, every single person with a phone has the exact capabilities to put out as much content as you and I do. We just happen to work a little bit harder at it. And you would know because you've been grinding on YouTube for a while now.
Well, and I also think, listen, when I'm on Twitter, I refresh my Twitter for new tweets like a crack addict. You know what I mean? Like, in order to get new tweets.
Yeah, okay.
It is not the same thing when it comes to TikTok, where you just, every single time that you refresh, there is unlimited content for you to view. Nobody said, like, I'm not saying that like the content is worth more or less, but what I am saying is that, similar to what I said earlier, a lot of content doesn't make it good content. And there's a reason that I care a lot about specific individuals who tweet things, because I want to see what they have to say. A lot of y'all, I'm sorry, you're just the same person, right? Just different account. It's the same thoughts. And you guys just, there's a really good thing about TikTok is that you can stitch and you can like put new takes on content. I like that. But a lot of you guys just repost things with different skins. And it's just to get views, and it shows, right? When I see like the 8th TikTok in a row that has the, I don't know if you saw this, but it's the Moist Critical, the guy from YouTube, the one who's like, it was a misinput. Like, it's like the soundbite that they do, and I've seen it everywhere. It's all over everywhere, and everybody just keeps replaying it and like voicing it over, and it's like, guys, like a little bit of ingenuity, please, just a little bit.
It's high volume, less originality, and
which is great, but man.
Speaking of content that nobody seems to want, so Russell Westbrook is now on his 4th team in 4 years. To you, we had the conversation and we said we would talk about this on our show on Saturday, I think it was, because there was the whole narrative of whether or not LeBron James is stacking the deck. That was the narrative that Charles Barkley put out there with Bob Costas. So I guess my question to you, first one, is Russell Westbrook an upgrade or a liability? And do you consider Russell Westbrook joining the Lakers? Is that stacking the deck?
I know people hate this, but it depends. I think with Russell Westbrook, he's an upgrade in explosiveness and athleticism. You are not going to see Dennis Schroeder driving the lane and trying to The one thing you can never say about Russell Westbrook is that he is not, every single time he goes to the rim, trying to do anything less than murder someone.
Yes.
He is attempting
He's a killer.
to end people's lives every time he dunks. And there's an aspect of that you will never get with Dennis Schroeder, especially when Dennis Schroeder's out here trying to get like $100 million contract, which is insane.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. The Lakers didn't really need more explosiveness. What they needed was shooting. And so Westbrook would be a complete liability, except for the fact that they signed people like Wayne Ellington, right? Them signing 3-point shooters makes Westbrook's problem no longer really a problem until we get to the playoffs. That's going to be where the challenge comes, right? We know that the Lakers can make the playoffs. That's not the question. The question is, what can you do in the postseason? And that's where we're really at. Is Westbrook can give he's like Harden, but in a different way. He gives you really good in-season performance. He will score a lot of points. When it counts, though, can he overcome with Harden his weaknesses that he needs to play to the whistle? Right? Like he needs like the whistle to come to his defense, and they let people play in the playoffs. They don't use the whistle nearly as much. With Westbrook, he's not as bad as Ben Simmons. He's not that bad. But they're going to let him shoot the 3-pointer as compared to LeBron or Anthony Davis. No, he's not a threat. They'll give him 4 or 5 feet of space. And so that's just, at the end of the day, he's an upgrade in explosiveness, but that's not what they needed. The other signings will cover up the liability, but I don't know how well they'll do that in the playoffs, especially when he needs to play a lot of minutes.
LeBron James made the point. So he tweeted last week. He sent out this tweet basically outlining how everybody's calling him out for building a super team, whatever. And he's like, everybody was calling out the average age of this team. And he said, keep that same narrative when we end up killing the league. And he deleted that tweet. I don't love a lot of the things that LeBron James puts on social media. Granted, I don't pay attention to a lot of it because I don't care. I actually did like this because we have this tendency to move the goalpost way more frequently than we should, where it's like, if you're going to stand on a hill, die on it. To Skip Bayless's credit, you can say whatever you want about Skip Bayless, but at least he's consistent. You always know that he is going to slander LeBron James. I agree with this because this is what I think. They went out and got Russell Westbrook at the perfect time. He's on his 4th team in 4 years. No superstars want to play with him. Kawhi Leonard could have had Russell Westbrook in that deal that what got Paul George, and Russell Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard were in talks. Like they were communicating. We have that confirmed. And Kawhi Leonard kind of swooped the rug out from underneath of him and took Paul George instead. And we've seen how well that worked out, where Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are essentially the same player, and it doesn't work. But I digress. I think LeBron James is low-key a genius in this instance, in that nobody wants Russell Westbrook, which means 2 things. Nobody else was going to go and get him, which means you didn't have to offer that much for him. Second of all, because he was so poor, when you offer to Washington, you therefore don't have to give up as much because Washington was essentially willing to get rid of him. That's why they were able to just deal Kuzma, KCP, and whoever else was on that deal for him. This is the other thing I like about it. Russell Westbrook, what LeBron James loves to play with veterans. He doesn't love playing with young players. He likes coaching young players, but he doesn't like playing with them. So getting Russell Westbrook was a huge deal because now he gets the type of player that he likes. This is the one thing. There are actually a lot of things that I like about this deal the more that I think about it. This is the one thing that not necessarily concerns me, but has to change if this thing is going to work. If this is going to work in LA with Russell Westbrook, one of the things that I've loved about basketball the past 5 years is we're getting to a point of more positionless basketball because you have so many guys that can do so many things. I mean, like the whole Kevin Durant sometimes and LeBron James both play point guard sometimes where they bring the ball up and then they just take it on themselves. You wouldn't have seen that as much back in the day. This positionless basketball is allowing for what happened in Brooklyn, which should have happened a long time ago. Yes, Kyrie Irving size-wise, just because it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck doesn't always mean it's a duck, if you know what I'm saying. Like Kyrie Irving, yes, he looked the part of a point guard, but he was not, and we learned that in Brooklyn. And same thing with James Harden. James Harden looked like a shooting guard, didn't play like a shooting guard, so they moved him to point guard and ended up working out so much better. If this thing is going to work in LA, this is what needs to happen. Russell Westbrook needs to figure out how to be a better, either play true point guard or play true shooting guard, but this whole thing of where he does both is not going to work because that's where you detract from and you lose baskets. Basically, you become more inefficient as a basketball team because, yes, this is the weird thing. Paul George had his highest career averages playing when he was with Russell Westbrook. Same thing with Bradley Beal. And as well as Kevin Durant's last year in Oklahoma City. And James Harden and so if these guys are going to work, Russell Westbrook's going to have to figure out how to play the position that he is. And it's either going to be point guard without the scoring, or it's going to be shooting guard without the shooting and just pure scoring, pure driving. But this whole thing where he's going to do both is not going to work. And I think when you're the guy who's been traded around, like he's at a point where they can basically tell him to do whatever they want because it's like, look, nobody else wants you. That's why you're on your fourth team in 4 years. So we can basically tell you to do whatever we want. And LeBron James is pretty good at that.
And here's my problem, right? I understand what you're saying, and we had the conversation about the super teams, and I think like we've said like what we're gonna say on it. Here's my question: when it comes to the age thing, right? Leaving the whole meme aside about how it's an antique shop, right? Leaving the whole meme aside, my concern for the Lakers is that looking at their starting lineup, here's what their starting lineup would probably be with everybody healthy,
okay,
right? God willing. Russell Westbrook, Wayne Ellington, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Marc Gasol. Right?
Yeah.
That's probably the starting lineup. Behind them, Taylor Horton Tucker, Trevor Ariza, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, and possibly Kendrick Nunn. Right? Those are, and in the playoffs, as you know,
Kendrick Nunn's not a bad option, a backup point guard either. That's a pretty good deal. Right.
But what I'm saying, my concern comes in this. It's that when you look at the Bucks didn't have age so much. They had some, right? But it was mostly the depth, right? And not just the depth, but they had a lot of two-way players, right? It was a lot of durable two-way players that they had, and that's what carried them. When it comes to this Lakers depth chart, Westbrook, like I said, is extremely good in the regular season. In the postseason, his shooting becomes a big liability.
Which is something you're going to have to fix.
Right. 100% you have to fix. And I actually like what you said because it's like, also, if Westbrook plays the way that he plays, he makes LeBron James less effective. And you can't do that. You will not win.
Yes. But also, LeBron James runs this team. So if LeBron can basically say, look, dude, you do what I say or you're out of here.
Right. My question is, you and I would both agree Marc Gasol as starting center is not ideal.
No, but I do like that he stretches the floor. Like, I think his ability to shoot the basketball if he's wide open, I think, which pairs really well with what LeBron James likes to do.
Well let's see, like, if I do this for you.
Okay.
Russell Westbrook, mostly about the offense. He's like LeBron in that most of his blocks are chase down blocks.
A lot
compared
of
to like quality like post up like blocks. They're mostly
his defense
chase downs.
comes in spurts.
Right. Same with LeBron James, and also LeBron James. He's one of the best players I've ever seen at avoiding father time, but we see it.
Yeah.
Wayne Ellington is not inherently like revered for his defensive prowess. It's mostly a shooting decision.
Yeah.
Right, was the reason he was brought in. Marc Gasol also is mostly a stretch five. Right?
Yeah.
Mostly is shooting. Like it's mostly for shooting. And Anthony Davis, although he's a really good defensive player when he's healthy, the problem is that he's not healthy.
Yes.
Like,
what can I submit to you this before you go on?
Right.
The one thing I like about the issue, I think part of the issue with Anthony Davis was when you run a fast break that's incredibly effective, you want two guys that are really athletic that pose a huge threat coming down the lane because you can't plan for what they're going to do. Like the type of guys who you want to avoid, guys where all you have to, like I was playing pickup on Saturday and this kid just like, he thought he was filthy with his Euro. All I had to do was stand in front of him and he couldn't get around me because he just wasn't that athletic and I wasn't going to like let him body me. Those are the type of guys you want to avoid on a fast break, the guys who can go up, over, or around you. The one thing that I'll say that I do like about the upgrade with Russell Westbrook is, you talked about earlier, Russell Westbrook is a fast break animal. And now Anthony Davis no longer has to run the fast break with LeBron because Russell Westbrook can do it instead, which I think will also help him to stay more durable because he's going to have less wear and tear on that stop and go.
Right, and I do agree with you there. My concern, again, is that in the playoffs, it's much less of a fast break game and it's much more half-court offense. And that's where you'll start to see the cracks in Russell Westbrook's game.
True.
And also, who are the players that are missing, right, at this moment? Markieff Morris, right, who brought not so much scoring, but it was the defensive intensity and grit. He was the guy. If there's going to be a guy who gets in a fight, it's going to be him. Yeah. Right. When it comes to even, I know it's a joke, but like Alex Caruso, there was some defensive intensity,
and he was more of a shooter.
Right. He was more of a shooter, and I just think, who's the other guy they shipped out? He won Sixth Man of the Year. He was on the Clippers. I'm sorry, I'm spacing his name.
No, you're not thinking of Rondo. I'm not honestly sure who you're talking about.
Like, the problem is that I'm not seeing a lot of Montrezl Harrell.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Right? You're missing him as well. That's a lot of grit that you're now missing about that Lakers team on just as an actual factor of like team chemistry.
Yeah.
But also on the defensive end. Generally, if you're going to win, you don't have to be the best at either one, but you need to be top 10 or top 15 in offense and defense. Your offense generally can't carry you and your defense can't carry. Like the Jazz, they can't, their defense has never carried them further than the second round with this current generation. And when it comes to like the Rockets, we've all seen how that goes when they play no defense. Well, and so you have to
statistically, there has never been a team in the history. There's been one team in the history of the NBA to win an NBA Finals that wasn't top 10 in defense in the regular season. And that was Kobe Bryant's Lakers with him and Shaquille O'Neal, and they won the championship the year before that. So I agree with you. Defense absolutely has to be a factor if you want to win the finals.
And I'm just looking at this lineup, and I'm seeing Russell Westbrook, right? Offensively based. Wayne Ellington, brought in for offensive reasons. LeBron James can play defense, but it mostly conserves his energy for offense. Anthony Davis, health issues and concerns, otherwise usually fine. Marc Gasol's not a defensive crazy person. Dwight Howard's fine. Carmelo Anthony is a liability.
I think Dwight Howard gives you a little bit of that grit that you were talking about. Just like a little bit.
Trevor Ariza gives you a little bit of that grit. Talen Horton-Tucker, we're not completely positive yet how much of that he gives you. Early signs are somewhat good, but like he's not Markieff Morris. And that's my problem, is that I look at this team and I'm like, you've added a lot of shooters, which covers like a big problem. But when it comes to defense, if Anthony Davis is hurt, who on this team stops people? that's not named Trevor Ariza.
Okay,
right?
I do kind of like Kent Bazemore on this team. I think he plays. I mean, granted, he is 32, but he does play defense, and I think he shoots the ball really well, which is why he worked out.
And you actually segue really well into like my other question. You in the playoffs, your rotation becomes shorter, right? You're not playing 10.
Yeah,
12
you're
guys.
not going as deep.
Now you're playing 8 guys. Who are the 8 guys that you're playing that are bringing defensive intensity? You're playing Russell Westbrook, Wayne Ellington, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Marc Gasol, probably THT, Trevor Ariza, Carmelo Anthony, and Dwight Howard. Right? If you like are using the maximum of your lineup, that's 9 guys. I don't know who else is getting in that lineup. Oh, Kendrick Nunn. If you go 10, right?
I think Malik Monk gets decent minutes.
I agree with you that he'll get decent minutes. My problem is like there's limited amount of minutes in the playoffs, and I don't know how you do put him in there without sacrificing the offensive options that the Lakers brought in. There's a lot of specialized people here and not a lot of two-way players. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is the one thing that we know about LeBron James is LeBron James is most effective when he becomes your biggest focus on defense and everyone else gets open shots. So,
right.
And I honestly think LeBron James is going to end up playing a lot of point guard this season, a lot more than we've seen previously. And so, like Carmelo's issue on the Trailblazers, I mean, he has been boiled down to a spot up shooter at this point. The problem was on the Blazers, that wasn't the role that he was playing. He was playing down a lot more on the block. But when you can get him open, like he knocks shots down. Malik Monk is an athlete who shoots the 3 ball. And Anthony Davis also, if he's open, he's hitting threes. So yes, you have age on a lot of these guys, but I do think you have enough youth because LeBron James has never cared. This is we always do this with LeBron James, where we get him to the end of
Miami. He really doesn't care about playing with promising young rookies.
Well, and he doesn't care about what seed he gets in the playoffs. That's very evident.
Sure.
And like that's never been a thing for him. And we're always like, oh no, he's this seed now. Like they're probably gonna lose. And it's like, no, like that's never been a thing for him. So Trevor Ariza, another great 3-point shooter when he's open. Kent Bazemore, 3-point shooter when he's open. Anthony Davis, 3-point shooter when he's open. I don't know why Jared Dudley's still in the league or why he's on this team, but he is. Wayne Ellington's a shooter. Wesley Matthews is also a shooter. So yes, you have a lot of old guys, but they're all shooters. So
is that boy still on? Wait, is Jared Dudley still on the Lakers?
According to ESPN, he's still on this team, which worries me a little bit.
I'm looking at their depth chart and I don't see him.
Okay, well, ESPN still has him, so I could be wrong there.
If he is, like that guy, like I don't know what blackmail he has on people. I don't know what he did, but he's bullying a poor intern somewhere that is getting him on this team. There's literally no reason to have him.
This is actual facts. But I'm just saying, I don't worry that much about this team. My only issue is I think everybody's really down on them right now. When you argue, most people are like, oh, this team's so old, they're not going to do well. That same narrative needs to be carried over when the Lakers end up going to the finals and everyone's like, oh, well, it's because LeBron James stacked the team. No, if you at any point before the season has started, if you want to say that this team is too old to do anything, when they go to the finals, and they will, I'll put money on it, you don't get to be the same person who says, oh, well, like LeBron James stacked his team, so that's why he's going. No. You said, this is what you said now, you get to die on that hill.
I think this is my personal opinion. I also agree. If this team is stacked, I don't even want to know what the last Lakers championship team was, because the last Lakers championship team was better than this team.
Oh yeah,
in my personal opinion. In my personal opinion,
actually, I disagree with that.
Well, my reasoning is that with Russell Westbrook. And I know you're going to hate this. Adding Russell Westbrook is basically adding a more athletic, if you can say that. I know they play different positions, so it's not the same, but it's like adding Ben Simmons with a slightly better 3-point shot. It's really hard for me to look at like Russell Westbrook, and I'm talking not in the context of regular season basketball. I am talking in half court playoff basketball is what I'm talking about when I talk about this.
Fair.
I think the Lakers are going to I think the Lakers are not going to be eliminated in the first round again. I think LeBron by himself will not let that happen, because if it happens again, legacy wise, that's it. Like, there's really no reason if he can't do it with this team, which is better than last year's team, right? I think you would agree. I don't think it's stacked, but would you agree that this team's better than last year's team?
Oh, easily. If
Boy gets bounced again from the playoffs in something that's not the conference finals or higher, I don't know where he goes from here. And so I think looking at this depth chart,
but
I don't have a problem with it for the regular season at all. My concern here is actually the same one that I have about like the Utah Jazz, where I'm like, I trust the Utah Jazz to like seed high in regular season. I do not trust the Jazz to like throw me like when it comes to the playoffs. And I think with the Lakers, my problem is that I don't think they have the same problems as the Jazz, obviously. I think they have like a higher ceiling, but my problem is that I look at this, I don't trust Russell Westbrook's 3-point shot in a half-court offense. I don't trust Marc Gasol, right, to give you any sort of defensive ability. So if you play DeAndre Ayton again,
you got Dwight Howard though,
right? But how much is Dwight Howard like? I get you, and I agree that like there are things to come to. I get really concerned about looking at this depth chart in a half-court setting in playoff basketball. I get really concerned about it.
But that point you bring up about the Jazz is exactly why I'm not worried. Like, who in the Western Conference legitimately scares you? Phoenix doesn't scare me at all. I don't see them going to the finals again. The Mavericks don't scare me because the only person on that team is Luka, and as great as Luka is, there's no one else on that team that poses any kind of a threat. The Clippers don't scare me because I know that Kawhi Leonard's going to be gone, and I know as soon as he comes back, him and Paul George don't know how to play well together. Who in the Western Conference am I supposed to legitimately be afraid of?
I think these are the teams. I'm not saying that they would beat the Lakers, but these are the teams to keep an eye on. And I promise I'm not trying to be a homer.
The Jazz don't scare me though.
Right, and I'm
because Rudy Gobert still hasn't figured out how to stop being a defensive liability by somehow, like, I don't understand how he won Defensive Player of the Year, because if he would have played any form of defense, any at all, and he stopped getting bodied by Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris, they literally win that playoff series. And honestly, they might have beat the Phoenix Suns because their center was just as bad defensively as Rudy Gobert was.
I think with the Jazz, it had much more to do with Reggie Jackson and what's his name? It wasn't the other guy. It was the.
I mean, granted, like Mike Conley being healthy, I think helps you a little bit, but still, like, you don't scare me down low, and you're about to deal Joe Ingles.
But here's my thing. Looking at it, these are the teams that I think you keep an eye on if you're the Lakers, right? The Jazz got better this offseason. I understand, like, if you don't think that, like, it puts them over the top of the Lakers.
Do they get better or they stay the same? Or do they just not get worse? Because I don't think not getting worse and getting better is the same thing.
No, Derek Favors was actually, like, a complete liability when it came to, like, basically offense and defense.
Essentially a paperweight.
Right. Hassan Whiteside is actually, I don't think he's anywhere near on the level of, like, other centers.
No, you're right, actually, about Whiteside. I actually do love me some Hassan Whiteside. I'll give you that.
Right. Drafting the kid from Baylor is actually low-key one of my favorite drafts. Like, I know, again, I sound like a homer, but I think it's one of, like, the better draft moves that the Jazz have made in a long time.
No, that boy Jared Butler was good.
He's nuts, right? And if his heart, like, again, like, God willing, like, that he's allowed to play, I think he will surprise a lot of people. I think that there are a lot of moves that the Jazz made that made them better as compared to just staying in place, which is very un-Jazz-like, which is why I'm excited for them. I still don't think they go to the finals, but I think that's a team you watch. I think the Suns you watch only because they didn't get worse, right? And so you watch them, and the other two teams that I think you watch are the Denver Nuggets with the healthy Jamal Murray.
That's fair. That team scares me.
That's a whole different... I'm not scared at all of the Nuggets with Jokic. I am scared of the Nuggets with Jokic and Murray. That's insane.
Yeah, no, I like that lineup.
I think as much as, like, we're talking about what ifs and buts, the Golden State Warriors with everybody healthy again, that's a team to watch.
Is it though? Like, what do they have going for them? Because Klay Thompson, yes, he'll be back, but okay, you have Draymond, I don't think is relevant at all. James Wiseman, I don't know that he's a great fit there. And yes, you have Steph and Klay, but you have literally no depth after that.
Right, but I think if you have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. I think Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, healthy, right? Again, with the asterisk of healthy, is one of the most dominant backcourts in all of basketball history. Like, it's insane.
But to me, it's an innocent until proven guilty, where it's like, you showed me what you've done the last 2 years. Prove me that I should believe differently. That's how I feel about it.
Right, and I agree with you. I'm saying that, like, I trust Steph. While it hasn't been proven yet, I trust Steph Curry more than I would distrust him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that.
Especially with a healthy Klay, right?
I don't trust Draymond, though.
I don't trust Draymond.
He's a shooting liability.
The dude's a liability. Here's the thing. I know you said, like, you don't, like, understand how, like, Rudy Gobert won the Defensive Player of the Year, and, like, we can have that conversation as well another day. I don't understand how Draymond Green was even in the conversation. I don't understand how anybody was like, because I understand, like, the whole thing. He can defend 1 through 5.
Winning covers up a lot of wounds, which is the same reason I think that Rudy won it.
Right, I understand that, but I think the thing with Rudy is that Rudy can't defend anybody on the perimeter, right?
At all.
Rudy is so right, but Rudy can defend dominantly more than most anybody in the league when it comes to the interior. And the statistics show that.
Yeah.
And the problem with one of the reasons that I had a huge problem with Draymond is because I'm like, Draymond can defend anybody 1 through 5, but so can LeBron. And LeBron's not in the conversation for DPOY, and Draymond is not defending anybody at anywhere near an elite level, let alone, like, Defensive Player of the Year level. Like, I don't understand how he was in that conversation, but I just think those are the 4 teams in the West that you take a look at. I don't think anybody else really scares me. But, like, those are the ones that, if you're the Lakers, how does your rotation match up with theirs in a half-court offense is the thought process I've been taking.
I know we didn't talk about this pre-show, but I was working on BYU Sports Nation this morning and they were talking about it, and so I just wanted to get your opinion on it. And before you turn out because you think I'm about to talk about BYU football, I'm not. I do want to talk about Zach Wilson, though. I know we didn't prep for this, but I feel so very passionately one way about Zach Wilson that I just need to get this off. So Zach Wilson had a scrimmage over the weekend, and he threw for 120 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. How good, first of all, does that say a lot to you about what Zach Wilson will be, yes or no? And B, how good is Zach Wilson legitimately going to be in the NFL?
No, because I think it's part of, right now BYU is looking for another quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
And, like, watching some of those, BYU has 3 actually. They have a guy who I think is the best decision, Jaron Hall.
Yeah.
They have Baylor Romney, who's a safe pick because he won't ever suck, but I don't know how high his ceiling is. And then there's Jacob Conover, who's like the really highly recruited freshman, who's like a real big wild card.
Yeah.
So you have no clue what you could get from him. I feel safe to say that, like, an 8-win season isn't crazy with any of them, but BYU posted from their fall camp, right? And the cornerbacks are picking off people left and right. Right? Like, it's actually, like, they've gotten quite a few interceptions.
Wait, but what does this mean about Zach Wilson?
But what I'm saying is that, like, I don't think it reflects too much in a fall camp practice where everybody just got there.
Okay.
Right? I don't think it reflects too much. I will say this about Zach Wilson. This has been actually my thought process from the day one, right? From the moment that, like, they started doing mock drafts. Zach Wilson could be phenomenal. Like, insanely good.
Keyword could be.
In the draft. I think he has the highest ceiling because there's so much to work with, and looking at how much he improved in a year, but he also has the highest bust.
Easily.
Like, potential, right? And so when it comes to quarterbacks, I think with Trevor Lawrence, the worst that you get, like, out of him is, like, I'm not saying he's as good as Andrew Luck, but, like, you get Andrew Luck-esque performances where, like, if he gets, like, injured, he gives you, like, some decent numbers, but he's never consistent.
And I think his floor, I think, is Josh McCown, whereas, like, even if Trevor Lawrence is bad, he's talented enough that he will be a backup quarterback for the rest of his career. Like, he'll never be out of the league.
Well, and I want this to, like, be heard, like, in its proper context. I do not think that Zach Wilson is as good as Patrick Mahomes in any sense of the word.
Oh my gosh. And that was the comparison I was hearing all day in the studio today.
Well, and the comparison I think is fair in terms of play style, right? Like the ability to move around
and they
the
have
pocket.
similar talents.
Right, for sure. I think the difference is that with Patrick Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes wasn't like a one-hit wonder. He was pretty consistent for most of his college career, and like
Texas. The problem was like Texas Tech sucked though. Was the only thing.
100%. But like he himself, this is actually one of my
No, you're right about that. He was really good despite the fact that Texas Tech sucked.
Well, and here's my thing actually. Like, and I know that, like you and I played like the Colin Cowherd game the other day. This is my other big problem with Colin Cowherd when it comes to like college quarterbacks, right? College quarterbacks. Colin Cowherd always talks about like Josh Allen, praises the freak out of Josh Allen. And is like, oh my gosh, he's an amazing QB and good for the Buffalo Bills, and that was so smart to get him, right? And he always talks about like these criteria for a quarterback. Here's the criteria for a quarterback. The reason that Ohio State quarterbacks don't do well in the NFL is because it's really easy to succeed when you are in the Big Ten and you are throwing to only 5 and 4-star recruits.
Their offense literally, like if you know anything about football, I'll tell you this right now. You said all of their receivers are 5-star and 4-star recruits, which is true. Their pocket never breaks down. Here's the other thing about throwing to Ohio State receivers. Their offense is so simplistic. They run drags, slants, and fades, and that's basically it. They don't run a ton of play action. They don't run a lot of these. You don't even see a lot of posts. You don't see like it's a very simplistic one-cut offense. Get the ball out quick, and if that doesn't work, then we'll just hand the ball off to our 5-star running back.
And it's the exact same thing at Alabama, where Nick Saban's calling card is defense. That is the whole 9 yards. With
I'm pretty
Nick
sure
Saban.
Ohio State has never had a quarterback to go to a Super Bowl, and Alabama hasn't had one in over 40 years.
Right. And so, like, even the same thing with Alabama, right? Like, you hand it off to your Heisman Trophy winning running back. And then if you screw up, so what? Your defense is going to get the ball back anyway.
Exactly.
We need to have a conversation about some of those cupcake games, like, that Alabama plays, that some of the other SEC teams do not.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's, and I'm not denying their dominance. Nick Saban is probably one of the greatest coaches to ever coach the game.
He's probably the greatest college coach of all time.
Right. But the thing is, when you're looking for a quarterback, what you were looking for is natural talent that's untapped at a smaller university. It doesn't have to be like the smallest university, but you want to look at it where the quarterback is. What you want to do is you want to find a quarterback who is making the most out of his situation and is unbelievably talented. And then if you put a system around him, he's going to succeed. The reason that Zach Wilson, right, like people like Zach Wilson have a shot in the NFL is because Zach Wilson is playing at, I know they call BYU like quarterback U. It is. I would argue it is no longer that.
Yeah, because it's been a while since Ty Detmer played.
Right, and so when you look at it, Zach Wilson was playing with, I would say, good receivers, not great. Nowhere in his receiving core was there a 4 or 5-star like receiver.
No.
He was running, right? Like he was like running, and he obviously had like a phenomenal offensive line, but he was running. And he was showing some skill there, right? He is adept. He has been, besides the 1 year, he hasn't had any major injuries, and he didn't have any problems with his senior year with it being aggravated or anything. He's not had any off-the-field issues, right? Yeah. Unless people want to count like his mom thing, which I don't think is really that big of a deal.
Just the fact that his mom's hot or what?
People are like, oh my gosh, she's like a Trump supporter, right? It's like the
I
Nick
don't
Bosa
care.
thing.
I don't think anyone really cares.
I don't either, but I think at the end of the day, the worst thing that could happen to Zach Wilson, right? This is my worst case nightmare scenario, is that he goes there and there's dysfunction within the Jets organization, which admittedly is not crazy, right? It's not that far out there, but there's dysfunction within the organization that begins to mess with weapons that he has, newly acquired weapons, and starts to ship out veterans, right? Because of like ego things. I think if the Jets start fighting about things and basically do to him what they did to like Sam Darnold, where they basically remove the floor from under him, I don't think Zach Wilson is good enough to survive in chaos in that way. I think he can grow. Like I think he can learn in tight spots in the NFL if there's a system. If there's not a system, and I will say, if Robert Saleh's fired, I think Zach Wilson's getting traded.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so I just think at the end of the day, like with Zach Wilson, I think there's a really high ceiling, but the chances that he busts are way higher than any other quarterbacks.
This is, I haven't liked Zach Wilson. I've never, do I think he was good at football last year? Yes. there's a lot of things I don't like about Zach Wilson. A lot of things. My first thing is, I'm not the type of guy who's going to date a girl for 2 months and then marry her. Not 3 months, probably not 6 months. You and I are going to date for a long time because I want to know what you look like in all situations. And I don't want you to be able to just hold up a front for me that looks good when things are easy and things happen to just be easy for the first 4 months. Like, I want to know that you got my back when things get tough and that you can stand your own ground when things get tough. My thing with Zach Wilson has been, look, like, I get it that he wanted to help BYU, like, be so much better, and like Zach Wilson didn't play that much at BYU. That's the thing that people are choosing to neglect. Zach Wilson, the 1 year he did, like, yes, he was injured. He's injured that first year. Then that second year, he was god awful, like absolutely terrible, not good. Made a lot of passings that made you question what the heck was going on. He also didn't play well that first week against Navy, which nobody wants to remember. The reason they destroyed Navy was not because Zach Wilson was amazing. It was because Tyler Algier decided that he was going to be running back one. Because before that, like, I think Tyler Algier was low-key playing linebacker not too long before that. Tyler Algier and whoever the other running backs are at BYU, who I should know because I work on BYU Sports Nation every day. But
Katoa.
Katoa, those boys ran amok on that Navy defense, and the Navy defense was awful, and they made Zach Wilson look average. My issue is that, first of all, the New York Jets is not the type of place that's going to make you look better than you actually are. That's the first thing. The second thing is, just because you looked like Patrick Mahomes doesn't mean you're going to be Patrick Mahomes. Because Patrick Mahomes, for everything that he is and that he wasn't, like, the dude had a game against, I believe it was Oklahoma, where he threw for over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. Like, he showed us that irrespective, and he did it for multiple years. I wrote an article before he even got drafted that he should have won a Heisman just because of how good he was, irrespective of how good the rest of his team was. It worries me that Zach Wilson only had one good year in college, and that one good year, the best team he played was Coastal Carolina, and he lost to Coastal Carolina. It worries me that I don't know how durable and how long he's going to last playing at this level, especially when he has absolutely no help anywhere on that football team. He has no star. Like, if he had like a Julio Jones, or like if he had any resemblance of any kind of stud on that team that he could like become a duo with, then I'd be like, okay, you got me. But the fact that I don't think Zach Wilson, first of all, it worries me. Like, I make jokes about the meme of him at the draft and not knowing how to interact with black people. That low-key worries me a little bit, because I do wonder how he's going to have what the feeling in the locker room is going to be like. I don't know how he's going to interact with them, and I'm not calling him racist. I'm just saying he seemed very uncomfortable at that draft, and maybe that's just because he's not a super social person, and if that's the case, that also worries me, because I don't know how good he's going to be as a teammate. Like, I don't know how much those guys are going to trust him. So there's a lot of things that worry me about Zach Wilson. I also think he's just a giant douche. Like, he just seems like the guy who's a little too full of himself, and life has come way too easy to him.
I think the problem, though, is that, like, you're drawing a lot of these conclusions from things that are subjective and not objective, because all the conversations that they've had with, like, his teammates have all been extremely positive. They all like him. There hasn't been, and I understand he's a rookie quarterback. You're not going to touch the golden cow. I get that. But, like, they've talked to Elisha Moore, right, who's probably going to be his primary throwing option, right, on this team, the guy who was drafted with, and they've apparently really clicked. They were having conversations. They were DMing immediately after the draft. I think when it comes to a lot of these things, I think up to this point, they've been extremely positive. Most of the news about him in New York, minus the whole Lisa Wilson thing, and minus, I don't even think you can call it negative, just like the whole like thing around his contract.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's normal.
Right, but like I think most of everything to this point has been positive. And then, yeah, he threw 2 interceptions in his debut, barely.
Just as a record, like, that doesn't bother me. It's literally just a scrimmage. But what does worry me is I was in the studio today and there were guys who were sitting there like, well, Peyton Manning holds the rookie record for most interceptions. And I'm like, yeah, but
if somebody says Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, like Patrick Mahomes, any of that stuff, like the person is,
the exception is not the rule. The exception is not the rule. Just because somebody looks like someone else who was an exception doesn't mean that they are automatically just like that, because he's an outlier for a reason.
Well, and the other problem is, like, when it comes to like these comparisons, right? The most accurate comparison is Patrick Mahomes in terms of play style only, because they have similar play styles.
Yes.
The idea that, like, Zach Wilson's not a gunslinger. You know what I mean? He's not a Brett Favre, like Peyton Manning-esque gunslinger.
No.
You know what I mean? Peyton Manning lived and died by the throw. There was no runs from Peyton Manning.
No.
You know what I mean? There was nothing like that. We will see Zach Wilson run this season.
I also don't think Zach Wilson's as aggressive as Peyton Manning and Brett Favre were. Like, I think he's a lot more passive. He throws things that are already open.
Which actually I think is like a really positive trait for him, because I think the problem you have a lot of times with rookie QBs is that you have them try and force things that it's like in college you can do that to a secondary that's not paying attention. Yes. You're playing the best secondaries in the world. You will not throw something over the top like that unless coincidentally you are the Jets and you're playing for some reason like these like stupid defenses at the end of games. But when it comes to Zach Wilson, I just think these comparisons to big QBs need to stop, especially from I'm a BYU fan lifelong. Zach Wilson needs to be Zach Wilson. Tom Brady was not Tom Brady. Tom Brady was the first Tom Brady.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Patrick Mahomes was the first Patrick Mahomes. Zach Wilson needs to not be compared to other quarterbacks. He needs to develop his own game and his own repertoire with these other players and build it from the ground up. And that's where he can succeed. If you start comparing him, especially, I'm sorry, BYU fans, comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, who is literally, he probably will end up being the best quarterback. Like he will take the torch from like Brady.
I think he needs to win a lot more Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes will go down as the most talented quarterback of all time, like the most skilled quarterback of all time.
100%. And that's what I'm saying is like he's going to take the winning aspect of it from Brady. I think that's what he's going to do. I think he will be the quarterback after Brady, as the same way that like Brady, I don't want to say he came after Peyton because they played mostly during the same time.
Peyton Manning was just a lot better earlier than Tom was, and then as soon as Tom took the torch, Tom was gone.
Right. And I just think let Zach Wilson play and let him be one of the best quarterbacks, but let him do it. This thing where we're like every BYU fans, I'm like, not to like spit in the face of the choir that you're a part of, but like BYU fans have this really awful thing where they think as soon as somebody's like able to be drafted in the NFL from BYU, they're like, he's going to be one of the greatest players to ever play.
That's because BYU is the king of wishful thinking.
This is true. And also BYU, actually, I have these conversations with my dad all the time, right? Where we have these conversations where we see a KSL article, right? Or whatever. And it's this thing that's like, will BYU win a national championship? Like Heisman Trophy watch. And I'm like, dude, shut up. Shut up.
We're just trying to win 9 games.
Right, dude. We're just trying, like, let's get a bowl game going. And then we can talk about the other stuff. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I just think with Zach Wilson, high upside, especially if he buys into the system and the coaches buy into him, and put a lot of development. Like the 1 year that Zach Wilson decided to actually work with the QB coach, he went from what you were saying, right? That year where they beat USC, but mostly based on luck as compared to talent, right? He went from that to like one of the most proficient college football seasons we've seen recently from like a one and done quarterback. And so if he buys into the system and the coaches buy into him, I think that there won't be very many issues. My concern is that if it becomes the Zach Wilson show, or if it becomes the New York Jets show, which is, I think, a little bit more likely, if it becomes this show where it's like the franchise decides that this is our quarterback and he's going to do what we want him to do, or it becomes a Zach Wilson show where he's like, I run New York, it goes either one of those routes, it's gonna go down really quickly, and deservedly so.
The irony that I find funny that you haven't mentioned yet is I'm actually wearing a Zach Wilson t-shirt right now, despite all of my hate.
I figure you didn't need it said. It's okay.
just for, because nobody's obviously watching the video on this, but I am actually wearing a Zach Wilson. It says Wilson on the back. It's a number 1. But this is the last thing that I'll say about Zach Wilson. He and like, I'm not rooting against him, even though I do think he's kind of a douchebag. But losing is an X-ray. Winning covers up a lot of things that you miss when you're losing. Losing, basically, if you can be who you are when everything goes to crap, like if you can choose to be great when the circumstances surrounding your life are terrible, that tells me a lot about you. So if Zach Wilson, because look, it's the Jets, they're going to lose. I put them maybe winning 4 games this year, considering they won 1 last year.
I got them at 6.
I have them at 4 games. So there's going to be a lot of losing. There's going to be a lot of Zach Wilson getting blasted by blindside hits. There's going to be a lot of interceptions. There's going to be a lot of losing games. My question is going to be, how is Zach Wilson going to handle that? Because we've never really had, like, when he was at BYU, everybody loved him. Even when they weren't winning all the time, everybody just loved Zach Wilson. The New York media ain't like that. If you don't exceed expectations, the media in New York will eat you alive. So my question just becomes, how is Zach Wilson going to look when everything goes to crap? Is that relationship with his teammates going to stay? Is he going to throw people under the bus? Is he going to point in different directions? What is the breakdown going to look like when you start losing games? And if he can handle that, that'll tell me a lot about him. But here's the one thing I know. Sam Darnold was not that different from him. We can say what we want. Sam Darnold was a pretty decent quarterback. He was a Heisman Trophy candidate. He won a Rose Bowl. Like, he was a very, very good quarterback. Very athletic. Very mobile. They're not that different. So my question just becomes, have we already seen this? Is it going to play out the same way that Sam Darnold did?
I think with Sam Darnold, I think it was less to do with Sam Darnold and more to do with the New York Jets.
Which is exactly why I don't think that's this dissimilar.
Right, and I think that the difference is that I think the New York Jets have grown up, not a ton, but slightly. I think the hiring of Robert Saleh is a little bit... I like that as compared to anybody else.
Oh, no, I love Robert Saleh.
And I think the difference also is that there's a head coach working with the management of the team as compared to Adam Gase spending every single week in his office locked down waiting for them to fire him, because we were all like, yeah, when are they gonna? I think that's coming. Like a little bit. I think that'll be the difference, is that like I think the story is really less about Zach Wilson. It's more, can the New York Jets grow up? If they can grow up, then they can do well. If they can't grow up, then it doesn't matter how many quarterbacks, and he'll just be another New York Jets quarterback that sucked.
Which I'm gonna put my money on. But last thing before we head out of here, we have to talk about this Michael Thomas thing, because Michael Thomas reports keep coming out. They keep fading out. There's a report a couple days ago that there was like 3 months this year where the New Orleans Saints couldn't get a hold of Michael Thomas. Now they're saying that he needs to be traded. To you, is Michael Thomas worth keeping?
It depends on the perspective.
Man, I hate when you say that. You say it depends on literally everything.
No. But what it depends on is, like, if you're a Saints fan, then 100%. Because what are your like?
He is worth keeping.
Yes, because here's the thing.
Nope.
Did you see that? Did you see that Jameis Winston like running through the court, like through the running back drill, and like people are giving him a little bit too much crap. It's a running back drill. It's not a QB drill, but like, you saw it, right? Him struggling through it and like getting destroyed.
Jameis Winston looked like every drunk girl leaving a bar on Friday night. Except the problem was he was totally sober and he's supposed to be one of the greatest athletes in the world.
Right. And here's my problem.
And he also said condom in an interview when he meant to say tandem. So, yes, there's a lot of issues with Jameis Winston.
Right. When it comes to your quarterback situation, you have Taysom Hill, who honestly, in terms of throwing last year, was not bad. The problem is the sample size is way too small, and so we don't know if he's good or not, right? I am a BYU football fan. I saw him. I don't trust his arm as much as I trust his legs, right? That's just me personally.
His arm just looks really good when you're so worried about his legs.
Right, and also I think part of the thing, like, part of the charm with Taysom Hill's offense is that because he's always a running threat, the secondary isn't as concerned about him throwing, which leads to I've been watching a lot of his highlights. He throws to a lot of wide open people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's a little bit different. And so here's my thing.
Because Sean Payton's a great coach.
Right. And if I'm a Saints fan, you either have Jameis Winston, who historically, we don't know if he's the same anymore, but historically has been a turnover machine.
Yes. But he also throws a lot of touchdowns.
He does, but he'll throw less touchdowns if he doesn't have a good receiver to throw to.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
If he doesn't have a Michael Thomas, and Taysom Hill actually and the Michael Thomas connection worked really, really, really well. Right. And so if you get rid of Michael Thomas, you have some I think if you get rid of Michael Thomas, you can't have Taysom Hill at QB because you need Taysom Hill to be someone you can throw to. I really do believe that. If you get rid of Michael Thomas, now it's all hands on deck when it comes to giving him offensive options. And so Taysom Hill has to be a gadget guy and a receiver and a blocker because he needs to be out there to give them some offensive options, and he does that better as a utility guy. And I don't think Taysom Hill can play quarterback. If he stays, Taysom Hill has a shot at being quarterback just because Jameis just is so risky with the football in ways that Taysom Hill's not. Right? If Taysom Hill loses the ball, it's more likely to be a fumble from getting destroyed by a linebacker than it is by throwing an interception, statistically speaking. With Jameis Winston, if you no longer have Michael Thomas, I don't know how you don't have Taysom Hill running routes because you need some dude to throw to.
Yeah, I disagree with you, and here's why. And I probably shouldn't even say this. So I'm looking at the New Orleans Saints roster right now. They have Kawan Baker, never heard of. Marquez Callaway, haven't heard of since he played for Tennessee. Chris Hogan, no. Lil Jordan Humphrey, no. Jake Lampman, if you have a white guy playing wide receiver, you got an issue. Tommy Lee Lewis, no. Ty Montgomery, no. Traquan Smith, no. Okay, so we've established that the Saints have absolutely no one to throw to besides Jared Cook and Michael Thomas. This is my issue, and I have this issue with a lot of different players in the league. You don't get to get paid and win football games. You get one or the other. And great GMs figure out, and in Moneyball, they also figured this out. You maximize people for their value while paying them as little as you possibly can. The reason, look, a lot of these Super Bowl teams, they're very complete teams. They're not always full of superstars, but they're complete. A lot that whole Seattle Seahawks team, the reason that it worked out so well is because they had very above average receivers, but they didn't have any superstars. And then you had Marshawn Lynch, who you had to pay, and you had Russell Wilson, you had to pay absolutely nothing, and then you had to pay the defense. It was a complete team, but it wasn't full of superstars, at least on that offense. This is the issue with Michael Thomas. He has already proven to you that he's a headache. You had off the field with the issues with him last year, even after he came off injury.
And I add as well, the difference, you can deal with headaches. You can't deal with headaches who get injured. That's really hard.
And this goes back to the conversation that you and I had earlier about people commanding value. If I'm paying you as an employee, I don't really owe you anything. You owe me. You better show me that you're worth the money that I'm paying you. Michael Thomas is not, because he gets injured and he has off the field issues that they couldn't even bring him back last year. And then he, in January, they say he needs surgery from the team doctor, and he goes to a different doctor for a second opinion because he doesn't want to get it. This is why I think that this works out really well in the Saints' favor. If you can get Michael Thomas back and prove everyone that you have him under control, you need a quarterback. What you do is you go out and you say, we'll package Michael Thomas, and if you want Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston, I think they'd probably do Jameis Winston because I think they really like. Sean
Payton loves Taysom Hill. He won't get rid of him. It's an ego thing at this point.
The only issue, and this is a separate conversation for another time, is Taysom Hill. I think he's growing up and he's realizing he doesn't like being the Wildcat anymore. He wants to be a legitimate starting quarterback, which, again, we don't know if he is that. Michael Thomas is not worth this. He's not worth the $20 million a year that they're paying him, which is way more than he's worth at this point. You could pay, you probably could pay other guys less money and have a more complete wide receiving core because your defense is good. You have Alvin Kamara at running back. You package Michael Thomas with Jameis Winston, or you take one of your guys on defense and you ship them somewhere for, honestly, like a Sam Darnold or like a quarterback that's still really young, not worth it, that you don't have to pay a ton because you can protect him with that offensive line and you'll have, like, you need somebody. I think quarterback right now is a bigger issue, and I think Michael Thomas is not worth the money that you're paying him, and you could get a lot back for him.
And I think also the problem is that it's more essential for you to have a good quarterback as compared, like, you can find receivers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can find receivers. You cannot find like the Denver Broncos can tell you this. You can't just pull an NFL quarterback out of nowhere.
Nope.
You can have tons of if you have a garbage quarterback, it doesn't matter how many nice.
Okay, I throw this at you. What if you send Michael Thomas and a draft pick or whatever you want to San Francisco? You get Jimmy G back. Because Jimmy G has 1 year left. Like, they can basically get rid of him at the end of this year. And they pretty much already have told us they want Trey Lance. I don't think that would be the worst idea. You could get Jimmy G back, and Jimmy G is a pretty decent quarterback. The Dallas Cowboys are proving to us right now that if you don't have a decent quarterback, you're screwed no matter how good your football team is.
My thought process on that is this. You would need to also... How do I say? You don't need to get rid of Jameis. You don't need to.
No, you don't.
But you don't need to.
But if you had to.
But if you had... I think... I'm trying to think of... Because we'll put it... Actually, I'll ask you this. Do you think the Saints' window... If they got Jimmy G... do you think the Saints' window to win a Super Bowl is open?
The Saints... yes. And here's why. Because you could send... Because obviously the San Francisco 49ers are going to want they're going to need a backup quarterback for Trey Lance. So you send Michael Thomas over, you send Jameis over to be the backup, which I actually think really works really well because Shanahan has this way of making quarterbacks look really good, especially with all the play action and how amazing they are at running the football. I think if you send Michael Thomas over there, you probably could get Brandon Ayuk back or whatever the other kid name is who plays wide receiver over there that they just drafted a couple of years ago. Anyway, I think you can get one or two like bottom, like pretty decent receivers back. And so if you get that and you get Jimmy G, you have Sean Payton as the coach, you have Alvin Kamara at running back, and you have Latavius Murray at running back, who we're hearing a lot of good things about, and then you get Taysom Hill in there to play all over the field. I don't want to say yes because Saints fans have been being let down for who knows how long, but I think, you're a lot closer with Jimmy G than you are right now because at this point, you still have to compete with Tom Brady over there, and you need weapons, you need guns, because it's going to be a firefight, and right now you don't have it on offense.
I just think, because what you said is true, you cannot have a Super Bowl team for longer than the year that they go to the Super Bowl and not pay people or make people have difficult conversations about cutting like what they're actually going to like. You have to have a Buccaneers conversation,
yes,
or you're breaking up the team. There's the reason why we all talk
and the
about
only reason the Buccaneers work is because Tom Brady takes no money, which is a lesson that the rest of the league should figure out.
Right. And so I think the difference is that, like, with what you're talking about, if you have Jimmy G and you get a couple receivers back, you retain Taysom Hill as a gadget guy, somebody that you can use to like do QB sneaks up, like just do QB runs so you don't damage Jimmy G because he's notoriously has a problem with that.
And he's not an athlete.
You keep your quarterback safe. You retain a top, because the defense is what carries the Saints at the moment.
Oh yeah,
right. That defense after this year is not staying there. Right, the Saints are already in cap hell.
So you think this is their last year to go win a Super Bowl?
I think if they are not able to keep most of their defense minus maybe a player or two, yes, because I don't see I don't see the viable alternative on offense that makes up for the slip that will occur in defense if they're not able to keep everybody. Unless they can pull the Buccaneers on defense and they're able to pull out competent offense, I don't think that they can do it.
No.
And it's not a Saints thing. It's every team. You know what I mean? I don't understand how any team would keep together that defense. That defense is like, I was watching those Saints games. Right? Like, the defense is insane.
The pass rush is really good and the linebackers are fast.
Right. And so I don't understand. You have to pay them sometime. You got to pay them.
Yeah. It's difficult. I think this is a lot of just wishful thinking for me, but I've never found toxic people to be worth continuing to hire.
Well, and actually to capitalize on your point, like, when was the last time you had a charismatic star of a team who was a star, but they were made a star by playing with a really good quarterback, right? Or at least a decent quarterback that was also toxic, that like didn't cost their, like, Odell Beckham Jr. Anybody? Like if we really want to talk about it, if you are a toxic player, right? And I understand also that we like sometimes mislabel players and we call them toxic and they're not really that toxic, but players who cause problems for their organizations because of their own ego and not because there's an actual problem, they're the fastest way to sink an organization is by sinking the locker room. It's the fastest way to do it. And if you, especially veterans, this is like the unspoken thing about the NFL. Veterans who are pissed off because another one of their veterans is not being treated at what they view as fairly, that will sink it so fast. It's one thing to have a toxic rookie who can just be traded. To have a toxic team leader, right, who is responding to another toxic teammate, that's a whole different thing. And so if you start to do this thing where you divide the locker room based on Michael Thomas, now it doesn't matter who you bring in. You got to start trading everybody. And I don't see any scenario wherein if Michael Thomas continues to be quote unquote toxic, I don't see any scenario wherein he doesn't destroy the Saints. I think you do all that you can to retain him because he's such a good talent. But if he remains toxic, I would agree with you then at that point that it's not wise.
I just don't think he's worth the money at this point. Like, the money, I think, is the thing that sets me over the edge. If he wasn't costing you this much, then I would say he's worth working out. But when, like, you showed to him how committed you were. You went out and paid him, and then he went and did this. That
and
shows
you're in cap hell. You are in cap. Like, the Saints, we were laughing at the Saints all offseason because the Saints were offering Taysom Hill completely avoidable $100 million contracts.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, to play with the cap. They were doing all sorts of ridiculous things to play with the cap. They are in cap hell. They like it's not that like this sucky team with like all this cap space that like paid a guy who's toxic and like have to start over. You have no options. You have no options outside of that.
And that's why I think, again, it makes sense to trade Michael Thomas for a couple of young wide receivers in return because you save a ton of money that way. I think the Saints are between a rock and a hard place right now, where there's honestly not a whole lot I think that they could really do to actually... I hate saying this because the Saints have never been a losing team, at least in the past like 20 years, ever since Drew Brees got there. But you might have to start do some losing so you can get draft picks adequate enough, because I just don't know where you're going to get a good quarterback. Like, and this year isn't the year to tank because I don't think there's any good quarterbacks worth going out and getting in this next year's draft. They're just in a rock. They're in between a rock and a hard place because they really don't have any options. Michael Thomas is tanking them cap wise. Their defense is ready to win now. So is Alvin Kamara, but they don't have a quarterback and they have no one else at receiver besides Michael Thomas.
And really, at the end of the day, like just objectively, the hard place is rebuilding. Right, and losing, which, like you said, I don't know if the Saints are prepared to do at the moment. Exactly. They have too much talent. And the Rock is the Buccaneers, and the Rock's not moving.
Nope.
And so, I think the Saints could obliterate the Buccaneers in a regular season game. They did last year. They can do it. I do not trust the Saints to beat Tom Brady in a playoff game. I don't trust them. Right? Like, at least there was like a prayer if you had Drew Brees. I like Taysom Hill. I don't take Taysom Hill in a battle with Tom Brady in the playoffs. I don't do it. And so and also I'm not taking Jameis either. And so I don't unless you're the Saints, like if you're the Saints, you have to make a big move and do something that allows you the flexibility to at least be dangerous to the Bucs. Because as it stands right now, you're not beating anybody, and you have an injured wide receiver who is really expensive. So I see what you're saying, and it's going to be really prophetic when like he gets traded and they get assets, and the Saints actually do really well, and people like think that like, oh my gosh, like they traded Michael Thomas, they're tanking, and it's like, well, no, like Michael Thomas is basically Odell Beckham Jr. at this point, like he really is OBJ.
I hate that we've had this conversation. I'm now at the point where I actually have no idea what the Saints do. There's no real viable option. My only thing is, like, just chop shop it. Just start selling for parts and try to acquire assets in a different way to make this team better. Because the Taysom Hill thing is not going to work because the gimmicky offense is not going to work for an entire season. And Taysom Hill is not. He's not a throw first, run second. It can work for. I'll point this out. I think it could work for one season. I don't think it works for a whole season. I think it works for 8 games max.
I think we saw Kaepernick. We saw Kaepernick, who like
he was a lot better passer than Taysom Hill was.
Not the year he got benched by Blaine Gabbert. Most of what happened with Kaepernick, I'm not saying that that Taysom Hill's better. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that with Kaepernick, the problem was that Kaepernick was fast. And NFL,
he was also a baseball player, so he had a lot better of an arm than Taysom did.
Right, sure. And I agree with that. But the thing with Kaepernick is that he was playing in a Harbaugh system. He was really fast, and he was playing in a way that NFL defenses hadn't seen fully. Like, we had seen gimmicky quarterbacks. We had seen that. But we had not seen a gimmicky quarterback that became the whole system. Right? Kaepernick was a whole system for the time that he was there. Once the NFL figured him out, you were like, oh, he's not even as good as Blaine Gabbert, which is the reason why he got benched in the first place. When it comes to Taysom Hill, I think it can work for a season. It can work for a season, and it got Kaepernick to a Super Bowl. And Kaepernick couldn't read coverage to work squat. Like Kaepernick is like that kid who was really talented, and then as soon as it came to like improving along with the rest of the QBs, or improving according to the defense, no, he stopped improving, right? Kaepernick really was like all athleticism. It was all instinct with Kaepernick. He couldn't read a coverage. And that's the reason that he got found out, right, and figured out that next year. When it comes to Taysom Hill could do it for a season. The problem is if you're the Saints and you're in cap hell.
Well, and you're not winning the Super Bowl next year. So you have to figure out something that's going to work for longer than that because you know that there's an end to it.
And that's my big thing is that Taysom Hill could work for a year, right? I think he could get you a win. I think he could potentially he passed the first round of the playoffs because Sean Payton's good at what he does and because you have an amazing defense. The problem is that past that year, once Taysom Hill's figured out, and unless his arm improves like no one you've ever seen, it's going to get figured out. He's not beating the Bucs this next year. And if he's not beating the Bucs next year, what are your options besides continued cap hell?
You got to figure something out long term. So other than that, there is no easy answer. You got to sit and spend a lot of time on this. If you're the Saints GM, I do not envy your job at all.
I don't want it, dude. That's the worst job. Like, I really do think like it's good that you have, you've got it's a good thing that you've got like Sean Payton at head coach, because Sean Payton I don't think would let the Saints lose games. I just don't think Sean Payton would let them do it. You'd have to fire Sean Payton. You'd have to literally kneecap him or fire him, force him into retirement, because he wouldn't lose games. Sean Payton's too intelligent of a coach on offense to do that. He wouldn't do it.
Sean Payton's the equivalent of Weekend at Bernie's, where that man, like, he made you look like your quarterback was living, and Drew Brees was essentially a corpse out on the field. And we saw that by the fact that Drew Brees literally threw, 3 interceptions against the Buccaneers in a playoff game and almost still won. That just goes to show you how good Sean Payton is, but you got to figure something else out. if you what they should have done is that, like, it's evident to me they didn't have a plan going into this year, and they basically put all their chips on the table last year and it didn't work out. It doesn't look like they had a backup plan or any kind of contingency plan for how do we rebuild this team, because I just don't see any other way that you win.
And I really do think, just looking at, I think, and this is, again, the conversation I think that you and I had a little while ago about Taysom Hill versus Jameis Winston. I don't think the Saints expected Drew Brees to fall off the wagon so quickly.
Yeah.
And also, like, him retiring, it came a little earlier, I think,
but
than the
which
Saints
I think
expected.
is actually good, though, because then you didn't have to push him out the door and let him keep losing seasons for you.
Which is true, but I also think I do have to point out, Jameis Winston, everybody talks about how he got to learn behind Drew Brees, right? And how he's improved so much. Taysom Hill has the smallest sample size of throwing, and we're still suspect of that because we watched him in college. What is it that we don't know that makes it even? I know that people want to say, like, Sean Payton, like, it's an ego thing, that Sean Payton's, like, letting Taysom Hill, like, compete for the job. Sean Payton's not stupid. You know what I mean? Sean Payton's not that dumb. Sean Payton is not that much of an ego-driven coach to have a quarterback in there simply because other people he's one of the smartest coaches to ever coach the game, and I don't think that's the case at all. What it makes me think is, what is it about Jameis Winston that we don't know? Because I'm not saying that that Taysom Hill has more natural talent than Jameis Winston. I think that's insane. But what is it about Jameis Winston that we don't know that makes it that there's even a competition? Jameis Winston had one of the highest, like, offensive rate. Like, he was, like, one of them, like, he had one of the craziest offensive seasons I've ever seen. If you, like, limit his, like, if you cut his interceptions by 40%, and when he threw in a record year, he's an insane quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Why is it that when he's competing against Taysom Hill, who a lot of people said had no business even being in the NFL, why is it that they're having such a hard time having Jameis Winston close the gap and, like, take over as starting QB if he's so much better? That's the thing I don't think people are asking. It's like, I think it says a lot less about Taysom Hill and Sean Payton and a lot more about what is it that we don't know about Jameis Winston that they have not declared. He won a Heisman Trophy. You know what I mean? Like, Taysom Hill was like a 6-year quarterback because he kept getting injured and had no arm. Jameis Winston won a Heisman Trophy. Why can't you tell us if he's the starter? And I think a lot of it is because there's something we don't know about there. I'm just saying, like, there's probably something we don't know.
It's very similar to the Aaron Rodgers, the Packers situation, where it's like, okay, well, if Jordan Love was really that good, then you would have dealt Aaron Rodgers because you weren't going to be worried about being left with him.
100%.
If Jameis Winston was that good, you would have already told us that he was the starting quarterback. The issue is, we don't know that he's that good. And if that's the case, we know. I think we know what Taysom Hill's ceiling is at quarterback. And if Jameis Winston's not good enough to definitively be the starter, that means he's not that much better than Taysom Hill at throwing the football, and you don't trust him that much, which again just goes to show you don't have a backup plan, and you need one because you have no options in terms of winning a Super Bowl right now. So
100%.
I think that's probably where we're going to wrap it up today. And thanks, y'all, for hanging out with us. Download the podcast. We love y'all. Go share us, and have a good day.